Okay, now let's move on the second part of this discussion. So we have a data frame df, and here we are removing some columns, just trying to make sure that we have a lightweight data frame so we can run it faster and we have clear visibility of some part of data. So we're just trying to focus on full columns, not the entire column list. So we're just removing some of the columns. If I check the shape of my data frame now, so it should be so we removed 6 columns, but the number of rows remains the same. And also you can rename the columns. For example, engine horsepower, we just write horsepower. Engine cylinders, we just renaming it to cylinders. Transmission type to transmission. Highway mile per gallon, just we're shortening the name HPG. These renamings we did only to make things little bit more clearly expressive. So now we're just looking at the same data, but we change the column names. Nothing special. Now one thing I want to focus on is that we want to find out whether there are any duplicate rows. One thing for sure that we don't have duplicate columns. There are a lot of implications if there are duplicate records. We'll be discussing these items later, but here we're just trying to see like how we identify duplicate rows. There is a method duplicated. If you run this, you will have a Boolean return whether the row has a duplicate in your entire data frame or not. Okay, so false means that there are no duplicates. Okay, so now what we did in this statement, so we passed this yes, no, or true, false as a parameter to filter away some of the records. So this will give us the data frame where we found duplicates. So we'll see some examples. Let's run this. What we're saying that out of 11,000 plus records, we have near around 900 records that are duplicates. So here what we did, we are just storing that duplicated data frame and then printing first few records of the duplicated data frame. So let's run this. If you look at these two rows, you can clearly see that the second and the third row, you can see that all the values are equal. You might think that what actually caused to have duplicate records. One thing might be that these are not duplicates, because if you recall, we removed some of the columns. But after removing those 6 columns, these records are found to be duplicates. So anyway, here we're not doing a real project, but we are trying to learn how do you find the duplicate rows. And then you want to clean your data by removing duplicates. So there is a method, df.drop duplicates will give you a data frame removing the duplicates. So let's run this statement. So here I am removing the duplicates. Okay, there is another very important process is that you will need to learn is how do you deal with missing values. So what does missing values means? Missing values means that you have rows and you have columns, and in certain rows some of the column values are actually not real values, and we'll see. So the method, if you run df.isNull, will give you all the null records, and you are just summing up. So let's run this. So what does that mean? So the sum is 0 for make, means that there is no null values for the make column. But if you look, the HV column and the cylinder columns has not 0 values. So that means the columns with the 0 sum do not have any missing value, but when you have value greater than or equal to on, there are missing values over there. So let's print the missing values. So I am telling that okay, I want to find those entries that has null values, So if I run this, so you can see that for this record number 539, the HP value is none, and for record number 1983, the cylinder value is null. All the remaining values looks to be quite good, So now we have identified that your data frame or maybe source data may have some non-values in certain columns, So you have to come up with a strategy, So one strategy might be that you remove all those rows. Like not always it's a good idea to remove those records. For example, let's say if you have a very small data set and you still have to model for certain problems, then you have to live up with your data, and one of the ways you can impute or maybe fill those null values. And here again, we can connect back to the mathematical items that we have learned. Especially we talked about the probability distribution, the probability talks about uncertainty. So one way to actually replace these non-values would be you follow the distributions of these variables, like what are the distribution of cylinders and what is the distribution of horsepower in your data, and then use some of the estimate to refill those values, So for example, if you think that the data follows a normal distribution or a Gaussian distribution, then you can use your mean to replace that value. And before filling in those null values, we need to know like how to estimate those static, Pandas has a straightforward way. For example, if you want to find the mean of this horsepower, then you just write data frame dot hp, the column name dot mean. So if you run this, you will find the mean value of this column. Likewise, you can also find the mode value of this. So now the horsepower or the cylinders, if you think that the distributions are normal distribution, then you use mean. And if you think that the distributions follow a multinomial distribution, you can use a mode of the values, And also, if you think that, okay, I want to fill the values with 0 or maybe a certain constant, you can do that, So I'm going to replace the cylinder values with the mode of the cylinders, So I write, so df dot mode dot cylinders dot mode, and then this will be returned at the list. So I just take the first value, so it will have only one value, so it should be good. Okay, so let's fill the values of cylinders, and now I will be running the same command that will show me that how many column values remains still null, So we fill the cylinder values with some values, So we should see that cylinder values have gone to 0, So that's what we are saying. But the HP values are still with null values, So let's also impute the values for horsepower, and then we will look at that what the state is, HP good, then we just write HP the same thing. Okay, and we are going to run this statement again. So now we should see that all the values have gone to 0, So that means that now your data frame doesn't have any null values, And I was saying you can also use this drop NA that will remove all the rows with null values to run it, because we don't have any null values, so it should be the same as the original data frame. Yeah, so if I summarize in the second part, let's go from bottom up. So we learned how to fill the null values. We call it null value imputations or missing value imputations. We have also covered how to deal with duplicate rows. The same will apply with the duplicate columns, and we run some operations that how to rename columns or how to actually concentrate on some part of the data by choosing some selective columns,